Welcome everyone to Enlightened Masculinity. Today's topic is it possible to be independent? Is there such a thing as an independent person? More commonly, we'll hear this in the phrase of independent woman. There aren't too many men that I hear. I don't know that I've ever really heard it like an independent man. There's no independent man movement as far as I know, but maybe I'm not up to speed on all of these things. But there's definitely like an independent woman movement. You hear about that a lot. And, you know, I think you're silly if you don't think that's absurd. Like, who is independent of other people? You know, I depend on the person at the grocery store. I depend on my auto mechanic. I depend on like everybody, basically. Almost everything around me, I depend on someone else because, you know, if this was tribal days, right, you would be, I keep looking over here, by the way, because Instagram is live. You know, if this was tribal days, I mean, you would need to do most of it on your own. There'd still be some tribal reliance. You'd rely on people. If you were a hunter or gatherer, or if you were a nomad, I mean, you would do most everything yourself. There wouldn't be much free time. You wouldn't be reading and, you know, reminiscing or daydreaming about your future goals. Like, other than I want to go on a hunt or I want to scale those mountains before the storm comes or something like that. Like that'd be the extent of your goals. Like, what's your 20-year vision? No, that wouldn't be there. So you would be very independent. That's independent. That's hard, man. I mean, I've camped, and that's hard, you know? So everybody is depending on, like, an independent woman, an independent man. Like, that's so absurd. That's unnatural. Like, men depend on women and women depend on men. Listen, if you think you're an independent woman, then the next time you're in danger and you call the police, notice who shows up. It's a man. Maybe it's a woman. Maybe, but that's a minority. And she gets her strength because she has an army of men behind her on the police force. You know, almost everything you depend on men. Like, if your child support, you know, where does that come from? So much of your court systems, your public school systems, the whole hierarchy of how the fucking government works. You depend on men at some point. Now, it might be you don't depend on a man, like in your relationship, and that's a sad state of affairs. You know, I depend on my girlfriend. Now, I am more dependable than she is. But that's okay, because she's more dependable to me than anybody else, except my teacher. And maybe some of my friends, you know. So she's way up there. But she has an advantage over all of them, is that she is just as, or in the same realm, order of magnitude of dependability of all of them, but she's a woman and she's with me. And so this is what I seek in life. One of the things I seek, like I'm a turban, I seek a female or females that are dependable, loyal, as honest as possible. And there are levels of honesty. And Angelica, my girlfriend, will tell you, you know, you think you're being honest until it's, you know, I ask some questions. So, is there such a thing as an independent person? Why would you want to be independent? What do you mean, independent? I wish there was someone to dialogue so I could get some other ideas about this idea of independence, like relying on somebody else, like having, you know, what it would come down to is if somebody was explaining, like, well, what I mean by not being dependent on somebody is, you know, and they would just like name some codependent, like very like destructively codependent. Like, I think codependence is a trap. Is like we codepend on each other. But, you know, if my girlfriend doesn't feel good, you know, I have an independence from that, where it's like I have my own feeling body. I have my own things that I'm dealing with or winning at in life or whatever. So just because she doesn't feel good doesn't mean I'm going to feel bad. And just because she feels good doesn't mean I'm going to feel good. But it hurts me if my, you know, the person that's with me for life isn't feeling good. Like, hey, what's going on? Is this one of the many emotional fluctuations of the day? Is this a monthly fluctuation? You know, that monthly fluctuation that women go through? Or is this something else? Did something happen? You know, so it doesn't feel good when she doesn't feel good. And I'm sure she would say the vice versa. If I'm not feeling good, that doesn't feel good for her. But dependence, in that there's a division of labor. There's a division of forces that we go through. There's, you know, a common vision that we have a dependence on each other. I depend on her to be soft. I depend on her to be nurturing. If she doesn't do that, then there's not much else that I want that I would even want to depend on. She should depend on my strength. She should depend on my fortitude. She should depend on my solidarity. She should depend on my consistency. She should depend on my dependability. Now, women should not just depend on guys' dependability. I think this idea of people are equal has somehow bled into the idea that all men are equal and all women are equal. And like maybe on a spiritual sense, but maybe on a spiritual sense. I mean, karma would say something different, but maybe. But this idea that people are equal somehow, I think, has come into people's minds that, you know, all men should be treated equally and all women should be treated equally, like as if they're equal to each other. No, that would be weird if some random girl came across my path and I treated her exactly the same as I treat my girlfriend. Like they're not equal. It would be weird if some guy came by and my girlfriend treated her the same that she would treat me. What's the value of being your boyfriend? Is there any privilege or, you know, benefits? What's the bonus? So having a discernment of, and this is basic. This is like, you know, there's so many nuances, the social hierarchy, the social matrix. There's so many different roles you play, and you play one role with one person and another role with another person. You know, you play 20 different roles throughout your day, depending on like who you're interacting with. But as you raise in status, your role becomes consistent among many, many people. For example, the president is the president to almost everybody. The exceptions being, to his wife, he is still husband. To his child, he is still father. He is something other than president. To everybody else, almost everybody else, except maybe business partners, and even to them, he is Mr. President. He is president. As you get to the top of the chiefdom, then your role becomes more stable. But near the bottom, you're a little bit more of a chameleon. You play your role what's needed because that's where you become valuable. You fit into what's needed. And that's how you raise. You become valuable to people and you offer your value, not needing or demanding even reciprocation. I mean, you do what you need to with your finances. You do what you need to with your business. You do what you need to so you feel good about giving, because it's setting yourself up. It's a trap for disaster if you give with not saying that you demand something, but really with the subtle expectation that you're going to get back in return. And then a week goes by, a month goes by, a year goes by, you don't get back. And then all of a sudden you're angry at the person, but they never knew that you needed something because you just held it in, almost silently expecting it, but never voicing your expectation. So that's a trap. So to the degree, you know, you decide what's the degree that you want to give without expectation and at what limit do you expect? And then, you know, that's where communication skills come in. But do you depend on people? What do you all think in the audience? Go ahead and comment if you want like a different idea in here, and I can chew on that. Dependence has this like nasty connotation, like it somehow makes you weak to depend on somebody. What makes you weak is being ashamed of depending on somebody. Like, I would want to depend, like if I was getting into a big brawl, I would want to depend on my friends. Does that make me weak that I depend on my friends to have my back? Like it's absurd, isn't it? I think these ideas from what I've heard from people that depending on your woman or depending on your man is somehow, it's like a weakness. It's self-destructive. It's not true to yourself. It's archaic or an outdated model or this and that. Listen, you're depending on somebody. If you think you're an independent woman and that you're independent because you're not depending on a single man in your intimate relationship, you are still depending on people. And you're depending on everybody except when it gets to the depths of intimacy where you want to depend on somebody that's going to have your back when everything else falls apart. When everything else falls apart, you won't have it because you depended on a bunch of people for lesser qualities. There's a reason why the man-woman relationship, love can conquer all. There is a reason for this. The bond between the man and woman can outlast any friendship, can outlast everything except the teacher-student role. And to many people, not a lot of people, not most people, but many people, the teacher-student role, the teacher is within. And so a union or a marriage to the guru within. Guru. But that would be like a monk. At some point, maybe that will happen in everyone's spiritual evolution. But having another person that you depend on. So maybe you don't have somebody that you depend on. Maybe you're proclaiming that you're independent, but you kind of want. Do you kind of want to have someone that you could depend on? Do you kind of want somebody to depend on you? What seems to be the first thing to do then is give yourself willingly to people. It's not going to work if you want someone else to depend on you, but you refuse to depend on anybody else. As a man, you should be less dependent on her. Some would say you should be totally non-dependent on her. I think there should be monitoring. Monitor how much pressure are you putting on her to be stable, to be dependable, this and that. The pressure she will avoid. She will avoid the pressure that a man's put on her, both by instinct and by nurture, nature and nurture. So by nurture, because so many guys have been mama's boys and have just put an immense amount of pressure on her, or tried to pressure her into being basically their surrogate mother, but who they also sleep with. It's weird, but that's what happens, you know, if the dad doesn't stick around and the boy is raised by the mom, and the mom didn't have maybe the mental, logical skills to convince the child of some things. And so it was through a lot of touch, through a lot of coddling, you know, staying in the same bed with the child to, like, it's one thing if it's a young child. So one thing if the child is like severely traumatized by something, who knows what that is, that those are rare, but, you know, they're bad. And yeah, you do that. It's another thing if it's happening on the family room couch and it's not, you know, in the bedroom of the, but when you do something like that, then that, you know, the boy grows up falling in love with mom and then seeking out mom in women. But mom also provided food. Mom provided food, didn't just prepare the food, but provided the food. So be aware of how you're treating different people. How you treat a person is demonstrating what role you expect them to be. The expectation of what you're depending on them for. So I don't depend on people that I don't know. And I think it would be a mistake for women to depend on all guys by treating all guys equal, like they're all equally valuable. They're not. They're not. There's the spectrum from, you could say like zero. Instead of going from 0 to infinity, let's say from negative infinity to infinity. So it's 0, the guy that you're not interested in, the guy that doesn't do it for you, the guy that you don't even know, or maybe you pass, but you have no idea. And then they could go negative from there, or they could go positive. You know, so all men fit somewhere in this. So what's essential is that you go out, you get around people, however this is possible. Whatever is possible for you. Maybe it's not possible for you to go to like the nightclub and be out until 2 a.m. You know, have a good time like that. Maybe it's just possible for you to go to the supermarket and walk around. Maybe that's nerve-wracking. Maybe walk around on the street, just where you might cross paths with somebody. Just cross. Just like walk past them. Just practice being as pleasant as possible. It will take time. But more and more, be around people. This is an essential ingredient that's just so absent from people's lives. Like even in tribal days, if you went on the hunt, you went on the hunt with other guys. Maybe a girl was there, but it was other guys. You were always around your kin. It was rare. It's a rare human that was not around people all the time. All the time. The women, they stuck together. That would be very dangerous to a woman to be alone in nature. We're already soft. Humans are already soft and weak. to like a lion or a bear or a wolf, like I would be a delicacy. I might have a hard body and hard muscles, but compared to like any other animal, I am soft. I'm hairless. Like this would be just like juicy, fatty flesh. Like I got excess fat compared to like what an animal would have. I mean, I'm eating chocolate. Come on. Like they're eating, barely enough calories to like get by. Like I am a weak animal. By myself, I would be a delicacy. Now put a woman. I mean, she could be there. There are strong women, but you would be a fool if you tried to convince me that men and women are equal in their strength and survival abilities in nature. On average, you find like the survival winner from that TV show, and she was a woman, and yeah, okay, she's better at it than me. You found one. Maybe you could find 10 or 20 or 100, but come on, that's such a minority. It would be dangerous for a woman not to depend on other women. But deep down in her heart, she wants to depend on a man. She wants to depend on a provider, because what's going to happen is she depends on a bunch of women, and they all must have some silent or maybe not so silent agreement that they're going to stick it out until the end. Sisterhood. But then one of them finds a man and she falls in love. If she falls in love, she will abandon all of her friends and go with that man. If she falls in love, and you don't want to be part of a sisterhood where all the other women fall in love and you don't, and then you're left alone. You would rather stick it out with a man. And a man should be loyal. If he chooses you, there's a loyalty there that is beyond the capacity of what she thinks that she can do inside. She might think that she's loyal. She might think in comparison to all the guys that she's been with, she's loyal. But I'm telling you that you've just chosen disloyal guys. You've chosen the wrong guys. You might think, well, I have a history of 10 guys, which is, wow, 10 guys? Like, first of all, no guy wants to get with a girl that's been with 10 guys, just so you know. Like, you might say, yeah, no girl wants to get with a guy that's been with 100 girls. All right, then don't. What's going to happen is you'll get with guys that haven't been with many girls, and they're going to be clueless. They're not going to understand your cycle. They're not going to understand your cycles of emotions outside of your menstruation cycle. They're not going to understand how to handle your problems. They're not going to understand how to communicate with you, because a man learns by skill. Women learn skills, but those skills are mostly detrimental, because all the skills you learn outside of the skills that are kind of morphed or molded by your man are skills that are not molded by your man. And so they're counter to what your man would mold. If you had certain ways of giving pleasure, but those aren't the ways that your man receives pleasure, all of those skills are useless. If you have skills of communicating that worked with another guy, but not on this guy, then if you want to be with this guy, you're going to need to drop those skills. So they were not useful. Whereas him, he learned skills from another woman. They actually are extremely helpful for this woman. This is my experience. That the man learns by skill. And if you want a man that is equally unskilled as you, then how is he going to lead and guide you? He might be able to. There are smart men, clever men, that will be able to figure it out as they go. And ultimately, we're all figuring it out as we go. But having experience to where she can look up to and follow appears to be what she deeply wants. And why I say it appears to be, because even in same-sex relationships of women, one is looking up to the other one. And the other one is doing her best to lead and stay ahead. And they say it might be equal, and there's some level of equality. There's always going to be some, like, we are humans, right? I'm not saying, like, you are a dog and I am a god. Like, it's not that, like, that's what I think people, like, you're just treating her like a bitch. Like, no, she's either behaving like one or I'm not. She's a human. She gets all the respect that a human would get. But I also respect that she is a different gender, meaning what? She's a different kind of human. That's what gender means, different kind. She's a different kind of human. All women are a different kind than all men. I was talking to a yoga studio. I'll end it on this. I was talking to a yoga studio the other day, and she's thinking about hiring me somewhere in like the heartland, the Tennessee, good old South, good country values. And she has middle-aged to older women are most of her clients. And, so there's some hesitation about hiring a guy who's got like a neck tattoo. He kind of looks a little, I don't know. I don't look like a normal yoga guy. I guess I don't even look like a normal guy. And if I come to teach them, then they're going to listen. So they're just a little unsure, about bringing in a guy. And I understand this isn't like my first rodeo. Like, yeah, I'm in an industry that's like 80, 90% women. There's been lots of bad reputations given to guys for maybe some of those are true reasons. Maybe some of them are not true reasons. I don't know. But there's definitely a lot of bad reputations for guys. So I get it. Of course, the woman should be very selective. The woman should be very picky about what guy she trusts because all guys want to get with you. Now, me as like a teacher coming in and middle-aged to retired women, like I don't want to get with them. But if there were no other women on earth, listen, it's an absurd kind of conversation. But there is a base instinct to all men and there's a base instinct to all women. And to the degree that there's a good base instinct in men, there is also a good base instinct in women. But to the degree that there's a bad or a destructive or evil or whatever, violent base instinct in men, there is an equally negative base instinct in women. They say all men are rapists. All women are prostitutes. On the same level that all men are rapists, on that level, all women are prostitutes. And time again, peer-reviewed publications and scientific journals publish about this. So, yeah, they should be selective. They should choose, do they want me coming in? What you don't want is a man. Here's what I'll tell you. They probably would never, maybe they watch this video and it's at the very end of a 30-minute video. I doubt they'd get to it. But what you don't want is a man that's either A, oblivious to everything I just said, because that's a naive man. That's the man that you want to get with that hasn't been with other women, and he's just aloof to your problems and the reality of being a woman. Like, yeah, it's scary to bring in a guy that you don't know to teach you. That makes sense. You should be selective. Be picky. I'm not offended if you say no. That's okay. 60 other studios have said yes, and 600 more will say yes, and it doesn't need to be you. I know I'll benefit you, but if you're not convinced I'll benefit you, there's no force here. I'm not here to force you. You don't want a man that's aloof to these qualities. You don't want a man that hides these truths because he's a liar. A man that won't say these things because they might offend you. Yeah, there's a way to say them. And so if I said them in a way here that might have offended you, that's not my intention. My intention is not to offend you. So if the subject or the tone of my voice or however I'm saying it is offending you, that's not my intention. In fact, my intention is to say these truths, in a way that doesn't offend you, that you agree with, and maybe it's even a little bit entertaining just to think about. What's more entertaining and fascinating than relationships? Like God, talking about God and spirits, that's on the same level. But like men and women relationships, so fascinating. So especially when it comes to like how miseducated everybody is. Okay. I don't even think I finished that story. Like they were looking, she said she needed to look at that. And yeah, I don't remember anyway, the yoga studio owner, she was looking at the things. Maybe I'll go there, maybe I don't. Okay. So any comments, guys, or any questions? Let's check YouTube. Viewers here, Arturo Hernandez. What are your thoughts that the woman is dependent on the man, and in return, the man feels empty from her? Let me read this again. What are your thoughts that the woman is dependent on the man, and return, the man feels empty from her? From what I'm like translating your question, because it's obviously not exactly what your question is. What are your thoughts that the woman is dependent on the man, and in return, the man feels empty from her? That wouldn't be good if you feel empty from her. Listen, if she depends on you, you do not owe her your goodness. You do not owe anybody you. You have a finite, limited number of minutes, hours, days, years on Earth. I don't know when you're going to go. You don't know when you're going to go, but we all know that we're going to go at some point. And probably those last few years aren't going to be super rich. You know, I mean, it depends. My goal is to be super healthy until the very end and, you know, have my resources and families taken care of. But it seems like there's a lot of people that towards the end of life, you know, those last 5 years aren't the best years. Maybe they are. I'd love that to be. So there's definitely, and then like the first 15 years were nonsense. You're playing video games, like you weren't, most people weren't learning much unless you were like Gary Vaynerchuk and being an entrepreneur at like 8 years old or something. Most people, first 15 years was just like, you know, sucking on mom's teeth, basically. So there's just a few decades in there. There's not that many. You know, you have a finite number of minutes, hours, days, years, and if somebody depends on you, you do not owe it to them unless, okay, if it's your child, that's a different thing. Now, you still don't owe it to them. Nature did not intend the guy to stick around. Not in humans. It's not necessary. But, man, I think that's a moral evil to not do that as a guy. I mean, I get the urge. I was with a girl in a super, super toxic relationship. This was like over a decade ago. And, you know, we actually never had sex with a condom. And how, maybe I'm impotent. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think my girlfriend would say that, but maybe she wasn't because she had a really traumatic past. Maybe she wasn't able to get pregnant, but for some reason, for some lucky reason, she didn't get pregnant. Man, I feel the urge because sometimes I think about it and I'm like, what if she had gotten pregnant? What would I have done? Because it was such a bad so bad, like the worst, like really, really bad. So I get the urge to like run away from the fatherhood. But for the most part, you know, the guy, if you're not sticking around, that's a really chumpy thing to do. That's really, really chumpy. But that's different. That's not a woman being dependent on you. That's your girl. That's your daughter, you know, or whatever your child is. So when you're saying a woman, I'm assuming you mean an adult. An adult depends on you. You do not owe an adult any of your minutes. This is why I don't like the whole idea of like Obamacare or whatnot, because that is requiring somebody to give their service to somebody that maybe can't pay. So you're owing that. Now, you can always give it if you want to. I mean, I've given hundreds of private yoga lessons. I've definitely taken my time and given it to somebody because it just felt right. But I've also said, no, I will not. And if I was in a position where if I said, no, I will not, and the Yoga Alliance said, well, then we revoke your yoga license. Well, that puts me in a situation. You're saying that I can't do my job unless I do it exactly when and where you tell me to? Like, way to take away my testicles. Like that just takes away my manhood. I have no choice. I guess the only choice is I could choose to not do that industry. But what if I'm the best doctor in the world? All right, so that's a little bit of an aside. You don't owe yourself to the woman. Now, if a child is involved and you feel empty, you know, you're in a situation that's, there's always a solution to every problem. So, you know, if you're in a situation where, and a lot of times, I mean, I'm sure men do this, but it might simply be by virtue of the fact that most child support cases, the woman gets the child. That because of that, the woman appears to leverage having the child more, meaning get what she wants, not what she needs. She gets what she wants from the guy by leveraging that she has possession of the child. You won't get to see the child. You're not going to see them for as long as you want. You know, you give her the gift to give to the child. She doesn't give it to the child, or she gives it to the child, said that she had gotten it for the child. Like, she will leverage your goodness. You know, this is the effect of past actions. This is the effect of past choices. That's, you know, but there is a solution for every problem, because that's what a problem is. A problem is a solution yet to be found. There's a great definition for a problem. And so if you're giving, or that's not what you say, you don't really say you're giving, you're saying she is dependent on the man, and you can always write more if you want to, you know, tell any more of that story. You know, the woman is dependent on the man, and in the return, the man feels empty. You have primary responsibility, you know, like they say in the airplane, before you put the oxygen mask on the child, put it on yourself. Like, so your primary responsibility is make sure you're well. You know, it's one thing to like give and sacrifice of yourself for the wellness of another person. You know, in a life-threatening situation, you do that. But over the long term, you know, you diminish your tomorrow's ability to care for people if you expend yourself today. There must be boundaries. There must be a limit. And for you feeling empty is basically saying that you were not empty before that. So you weren't empty. You didn't go into the interaction empty. You were empty afterwards. If you feel empty afterwards, that means you gave something and it wasn't replenished. So that's saying that she was dependent. You're saying that she was dependent. You're saying she was dependent and you gave and you were not refilled from what you gave. And so you felt empty afterwards. Is that about it? So there needs to be more boundary and of what you're willing to give. And there's, you know, 1,000 ways to go into that. It really depends on what it is exactly. But also cause and effect. So even simply saying the next time a similar situation comes up, hey, last time I felt really empty after this happened. What do you think about that? Before I start going into explaining too much, and this happens a lot with guys, is I see guys, they try to explain to the girl, and the girl doesn't get it. Like shorter sentences when you're trying to convince your girlfriend or your wife or the baby's mama of anything. Shorter phrases. Hand it back to her. I felt empty last time. What do you think about that? What do you mean you felt empty? Well, I just felt like I gave and I didn't receive anything back. How do you feel about when I say that? You see, I just keep giving it back to her to get her peace of mind about it so that we can get on the same page. Joe WRX. How do you show the woman to follow you? You just lead. You lead, but always at the woman's pace. So if she's worth it to you, you will slow your roll so that she can keep up in whatever direction. It might be a mental direction. I think somebody's about to come in the door, so it might be loud. Hello, come on in.
Hello.
What's up, gangster?
What's up?
What's up, Karma? All right, I'm going to wrap this up, guys. Yeah, how do you show the woman to follow you? It's the same way you would show a man to follow you. You lead. If you are surviving well, if you're doing well, if you're making friends, if you're communicating well, then people will naturally just want to follow you. They'll want to be like you. You show that you're winning. And showing that you're winning can be simple, like showing your bank account, but it's in your voice tone and your demeanor. Do you have a winning personality? Do you appear, if like an alien or someone outside was like watching you, do you appear like a winner? Do you look like a winner, or are you carrying your shoulders low? Is your head hanging low? Is your voice tone very low? Are you dragging your feet? Those are the body languages of losers. That's going to be really hard for a woman to follow if you're behaving like a loser. That doesn't mean you are a loser. That means you're behaving like one. So behaving like a winner is how you show the woman to follow you. All right, cool. So I'm going to wrap it up, guys. I have silent flute lecture here in 40 minutes. If you care to join the silent flute, then check me out at ninthlimb.com, and it'll be mind-blowing. This was just a kind of free talk about something that I wouldn't normally talk about in silent flute, so I'm happy to do it. If this is something for you, then comment below and like. Everybody's already subscribed, but if you catch this later, then subscribe and share it on social media so that people see it. All right. Thanks so much for your time. Namaste.